My friend Jessica's old house. The house I grew up in and lived in with my parents until after my college days was haunted by an older man who had a bad temper and didn't like being messed with, as well as a little girl who loved to play and be a kid, but was also tormented by the male spirit. I'm not sure if she was his daughter or what, but I'll get to them later. I met Jessica when she was in high school and I was in middle school, but we didn't actually start hanging out and becoming good friends until after she graduated and I was about to graduate high school. We shared a mutual friend, and because of him, I met her. The three of us were inseparable for quite a few years after that. Jessica and I joined the theater group she started in our small city, and we would spend a lot of time rehearsing and talking about our next play or designing sets at her house. Spending so much time at her house led Jessica to open up about the ghosts that haunted it. Her mom, who loved the stories, would also share them with me. Apparently, there were so many stories from over the years that her mom started writing them all down on a computer file with aspirations to write a book about it one day. There were several eerie incidents that Jessica and her mom told me about. One particular incident involved a girl who decided to taunt the ghosts during a cast party for one of the high school plays. Despite Jessica's attempts to dissuade her, the girl walked through the house talking trash to the ghosts. Suddenly, in one of the spare bedrooms, a sewing machine started running even though it was already unplugged. Terrified, the girl fled the house, never to return. It seemed like most of the activity in the house happened to Jessica. She would often hear footsteps and feel a presence in her upstairs bedroom, which was located on the top floor of the house. She developed a sleep habit where nothing could wake her, likely out of fear of what she might see if she did wake up. There were times when we would try to wake her up, even resorting to laying on her car hood or blowing the horn, but she wouldn't stir. Jessica also had a habit of sleep texting people nonsensical messages. According to Jess and her mom, they would hear someone running around the floor above them when no one was there. The running always sounded like a child's footsteps. There were many strange occurrences that puzzled them over the years. One day when I went over to Jessica's house, she was frantically searching for her purse. Both of her parents were at work, and we were the only ones in the house. She had looked in every room, including her upstairs bedroom, but couldn't find it. As she stood near the bottom of the stairs, contemplating where her purse could be, it suddenly flew down the stairs, hitting her in the chest before falling to the floor. She looked pale and shocked, and I couldn't help but laugh. Despite witnessing that incident, I still think the most chilling story happened to Jessica alone. She came home from college one day while her parents were at work, and as she was using the bathroom, she heard the sound of a little girl crying. The crying grew louder and seemed to come from right outside the bathroom door. Jessica panicked and yelled for it to go away, but the crying persisted. She finally mustered the courage to leave the bathroom and ran to the kitchen, with the crying following her until she left the house. Despite witnessing that incident, I still think the most chilling story happened to Jessica alone. She came home from college one day while her parents were at work, and she was using the bathroom. She heard the sound of a little girl crying, and the crying grew louder and seemed to come from right outside the back room door. Jessica panicked and yelled for it to go away, but it persisted. She mustered the courage to leave the bathroom and ran into the kitchen, when the crying followed her until she left the house. One night after a long day of working on set pieces with the theater group at Jessica's house, only Jessica, one of the cast members, and I remained. We had been discussing ghosts, particularly the ones that occurred in Jessica's childhood home, where I spent countless hours with her and our close-knit group of friends. The house itself carried a mysterious aura, a presence that seemed to linger in every room and hallway. I was drawn to its enigmatic charm, fascinated by the tales that unfolded within its walls. Jessica and I had known each other ever since our school days, but it wasn't until she graduated and I was on the cusp of finishing high school that we truly became inseparable. Our shared passion for theater brought us together, as she and our mutual friend ran a theater group in our small city. Joining their troupe after my graduation, I discovered that spending time at Jessica's house became a regular occurrence for us all. It was during those rehearsals, late-night conversations, and design sessions that Jessica began to open up about all the hauntings that plagued her childhood home. Her mother, who was delighted in the supernatural occurrences, shared her collection of the stories with me. She had even started documenting them, envisioning a book that would chronicle their haunting experiences. Numerous incidents were recounted to me, some of which had taken place during Jessica's high school years when the drama club would gather at her house. I vividly remember one cast party where a skeptical girl decided to taunt the ghosts. Jessica, well aware of the consequences, tried to dissuade her, but the girl persisted in provoking the spirits. Within the spare bedroom of the first floor, which had been converted into a multi-purpose room, stood an old sewing machine. As the girl continued her taunting, the machine suddenly sprang to life, causing both Jessica and the girl to be gripped by fear. What terrified them even more was the realization that the sewing machine had already been unplugged. The girl, pale-faced and trembling, swiftly fled the house, never to return. Several witnesses attested to this unnerving occurrence. It seemed that Jessica bore the brunt of the supernatural activity. Perhaps it was her fear and vulnerability that attracted the spirit's attention. Her father, indifferent to the paranormal, paid no mind to the hauntings. On the other hand, her mother embraced the stories with enthusiasm. As for Jessica, she lived in constant dread, especially because her bedroom was situated on the top floor, a spacious area that could have been 2 large bedrooms, but was left open. Night after night, Jessica would lie in bed, listening to the footsteps traversing her floor. Sometimes the footsteps would race back and forth, and she could even feel an unseen presence sitting on the edge of her bed. Fear overwhelmed her, and she would bury herself under the blankets, hoping the specter would vanish. To cope with her terror, she developed a sleep habit so deep that no disturbance could rouse her. We often shared stories of our futile attempts to wake her, resorting to unconventional methods like honking car horns or leaving messages filled with nonsensical sleep texting. Both Jessica and her mother recounted instances where they would hear someone running above them. Despite knowing that no one was upstairs, the sound of the footsteps resembled those of a child, a clear indication that the supernatural entities extended beyond the malevolent male spirit. One day, as I arrived at Jessica's house to hang out, she frantically searched for her purse, which seemed to have mysteriously vanished. We combed through every room, including her upstairs bedroom, but to no avail. She had just returned from college classes and was certain that she had brought her purse inside. As she stood at the bottom of the stairs, pondering its whereabouts, the purse suddenly hurtled down the steps, hitting her chest before landing on the floor. Her face contorted with shock. She stared at the purse lying on the floor, disbelief etched across her features. It was as if the unseen force had not only taken her purse, but had returned it to her in a dramatic fashion. A chill ran down our spines, and an eerie silence enveloped the house. From that moment on, our curiosity intensified, and we became determined to unravel the mysteries hidden within the old walls. Armed with a digital recorder, a camera, and our brave souls, we embarked on a quest to document the supernatural phenomenon that plagued Jessica's childhood home. Late into the night, we set up our equipment, eagerly waiting for any sign of paranormal activity. The air grew heavy with anticipation as we sat in the dimly lit living room, our hearts pounding in unison. Suddenly, a faint whisper echoed through the room, sending shivers down our spines. We strained to listen, hoping to decipher the message. As the minutes ticked by, the whispers grew louder, blending into a chorus of eerie voices. It was an indistinguishable cacophony of words filled with anguish and despair. We exchanged wide-eyed glances, realizing that the spirits were desperately trying to communicate with us. Intrigued yet cautious, we pressed on, exploring each room of the house. Shadows danced along the walls, and cold drafts brushed against our skin. Each creaking floorboard and flickering light bulb seemed to hold a hidden meaning, a clue to the haunted's origins. We descended into the basement, a dimly lit space that emanated a foreboding energy. The air grew thick with a sense of lingering sorrow, and the temperature dropped significantly. Our flashlight beams illuminated old photographs and forgotten belongings, remnants of a bygone era. It was in this desolate space that we encountered the most intense supernatural activity. A sudden gust of wind extinguished our flashlight, plunging us into darkness. Panic set in, but we mustered the courage to continue. That's when we heard it, the sound of a child's laughter echoing through the darkness. It was a chilling sound, both innocent and haunting, as if the spirit of the past sought solace in playful memories. Guided by the ethereal laughter, we fumbled through the darkness until we stumbled upon a small hidden room. The walls were adorned with drawings and scribbles, created by a child's hand. The room resonated with joy and innocence of youth, yet there is an underlying sadness that tugged at our hearts. With trembling hands, we captured photographs and recordings, hoping to piece together the story behind this forgotten chamber. Who was the child? What had transpired in this hidden sanctuary? Our investigations continued for months, unearthing more stories and encounters and unexplained phenomenon. We delved into the history of the house, connecting the dots between past owners and their tragedies. The spirits, it seemed, were tethered to the house, bound by unresolved emotions and unfinished business. As we compiled our findings, Jessica's mother's dream of writing a book became a shared passion. We vowed to honor the spirits and share their stories with the world, shedding light on the supernatural occurrences that plagued Jessica's childhood home. The book, aptly titled Whispers of the Past, became a testament to our experiences and the countless nights spent unraveling the mysteries within those haunted walls. It serves as a reminder that the realms of the living and the dead are intertwined, and that sometimes the past yearns to be heard. Years later, as we flipped through the pages of our book, memories flooded back. The fear, the fascination, and the unyielding bond we formed during those investigations. The haunted house had shaped us, leaving an indelible mark on our lives. We had ventured into the realm of the unknown, confronting the supernatural head-on, and emerged forever changed. The success of Whispers of the Past propelled us into the world of the paranormal and research. We became sought-after experts, invited to speak at conferences, and collaborate with fellow investigators. Our passion for unraveling the mysteries of the supernatural grew stronger with each passing day. But amidst the recognition and acclaim, we never forgot the house that started it all. Jessica's childhood home remained a beacon, drawing us back in time again. Its walls held secrets that continued to haunt us, urging us to dig deeper, to uncover the truth. Our return to the house was met with mixed emotions. Excitement mingled with trepidation as we stepped through its familiar threshold. The spirits seemed to welcome us, their presence palpable in the air. It was as if they too had been waiting for our return, eager to share more of their stories. Armed with new technology and a wealth of knowledge, we delved even deeper into the mysteries that lay within those haunted walls. Our investigations took us to uncharted territories, exploring forgotten tunnels and deciphering cryptic symbols, and communicating with spirits through advanced methods. With each discovery, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. We unraveled the tales of lost souls, tragic love affairs, and unspeakable horrors that had plagued the house for centuries. The spirits once tormented and restless found solace in our presence, their stories finally acknowledged and shared with the world. But as we neared the culmination of our research, a darkness loomed over the house. It was a malevolent force, distinct from the spirits that we had encountered before. It seemed determined to protect its secrets, to silence us before we could expose its true nature. Strange occurrences escalated, objects levitated, voices turned hostile, and malevolent shadows lurked in the corners of our vision. We realized that we had stumbled upon a darker, more sinister entity that had been manipulating the spirits all along. Undeterred by the growing danger, we pushed forward, determined to confront this malevolence head-on. Armed with ancient incantations and a collective resolve, we embarked on a final, perilous journey deep into the heart of the house. The battle that ensued was a clash of light and darkness, of ancient knowledge against unfathomable evil. We fought with every ounce of strength and will, channeling the spirit's energy as our own. The house trembled, its foundation shaken by the epic struggle unfolding within its walls. In the end, light prevailed, banishing the malevolent entity from the house. The spirits, now free from its grasp, found peace at last. We had not only uncovered the house's secrets, but also liberated and tormented souls that were trapped within its confines. As we stood outside the house, its haunting reputation now a distant memory, a sense of closure washed over us. Our journey had come full circle, and we had fulfilled our mission. The house that had once terrified us had become a symbol of triumph and redemption. Our experiences within those haunted walls had forever changed us. We carried the weight of the supernatural, the knowledge that the unseen world exists alongside our own. But instead of fear, we embraced it with respect and reverence, vowing to continue our quest for understanding and compassion in the face of the unknown. And so, we embark on new adventures, exploring other haunted locations, assisting those tormented by spirits, and shedding light on the paranormal. But the house that left an indelible mark on our lives would always hold a special place in our hearts, a reminder of the transformative power of the supernatural and the resilience of the human spirit. Our encounters with the supernatural had tested our limits, pushing us to the edge of our fears and doubts. Yet, through it all, we discovered the incredible strength that resided within each of us. The resilience of the human spirit is a remarkable force, capable of withstanding even the darkest of shadows. In the aftermath of our journey, we found ourselves reflecting on the profound lessons that we had learned. We realized that resilience is not merely about surviving adversity. It's about embracing it, learning from it, and emerging stronger on the other side. The haunted house had become a metaphor for life itself, a constant reminder that challenges and obstacles will inevitably come our way. But it is in the face of these challenges that we have the opportunity to rise above, to tap into our inner strength and transform ourselves. We shared our experiences with others, hoping to inspire them to embrace their own resilience in the face of adversity. We did this through lectures and books and even documentary about our journey. We aimed to ignite a spark within others, encouraging them to confront their fears head-on and discover the depths of their own resilience. As we continued our explorations into the supernatural, we encountered individuals who had their own stories of resilience. We met haunted souls who had endured unimaginable tragedies, yet refused to let their past define them. Their resilience was awe-inspiring, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to heal and grow. Together we formed a community of survivors, sharing our experiences, supporting one another, and finding solace in the shared understanding of what it means to overcome adversity. We discovered that resilience is not a solitary journey, but a collective strength that flourishes when we're together. In the years that followed, our work expanded beyond haunted houses and paranormal investigations. We channeled our energy into initiatives that promoted mental health, self-empowerment, and resilience building. We conducted workshops and organized retreats and collaborated with experts in various fields to provide resources and tools for individuals seeking to cultivate their resilience. The legacy of the haunted house lived on through our efforts, not just as a reminder of the supernatural, but as a symbol of the resilience that we had discovered within ourselves. It had become a beacon of hope for those who felt lost in the shadows, a testament that no matter how daunting the journey may seem, resilience can guide us toward light and transformation. And so, we continue to explore the mysteries of the supernatural, driven by a deep curiosity and a desire to uncover the unknown. But our ultimate mission remained unchanged, to inspire and empower others to embrace their own resilience, to recognize the extraordinary strength that resides within them, and to never shy away from the challenges that life presents. For in the face of the unknown, we discover that resilience is not just a quality that we possess, it is a power that we can cultivate, a force that enables us to transcend our limitations and thrive in the face of adversity. And with this newfound understanding, we embarked on a lifelong journey, forever grateful for the haunted house that had left an indelible mark on our lives, igniting a flame of resilience that would burn brightly within us and others for years to come. I wish we had the answer. I was the type of person who made everyone feel happy and alive, making even the most mundane things exciting. Watching paint dry was an adventure in her presence. I've been grappling with the circumstances, trying to make sense of it all, but it's been impossible. I had been taking care of her 2 children, hoping to support her until she got back on her feet. After 8 long months, she was just 3 days away from coming home, but now that day will never come. A little over a week after she passed away, I had a dream. In that dream, she was there, wearing her ripped jeans and scuffed up black and white Converse shoes. She had her feet propped up on a bench as if nothing had ever happened. The moment I saw her, my heart leapt, and I rushed over to her. Taking her little hands in mine, I could smell the scent of her hair as I stroked it. She had a knack for creating things with her hands, so they were always soft, with a hint of roughness on her fingertips. I could feel it all. It felt so incredibly real. Jeannie, oh my God, please listen to me. I frantically pleaded with her, desperate for her to understand that she was gone. I can't express how intense that moment was. My desperation scared both of us. I told her how she died and that she seemed to be trying to remember. Then suddenly, a light switch went on in her mind, as if she finally understood how it might have happened. In that instant, a faded image of her brother appeared in the background, his face cupped in his hands, crying. I saw fear in her eyes. She shook her head, denying the reality that I was presenting to her. There was a vibration of disbelief, as if she never thought such a thing could even happen. It seemed like she finally realized that she was no longer among the living. Why are you telling me this now? She asked, a mix of confusion and frustration in her voice. It's too late. Now, mind you, this was just a dream, but I told her that maybe, just maybe, in some parallel or alternate time or dimension, she would have listened to me. Maybe in that different reality, she wouldn't have made the decision that led to her demise. I said that if she believed me, perhaps I would wake up in that time or dimension, and maybe, just maybe, she would walk through my front door, telling me she loves me, and all this pain would simply be a bad dream. When I woke up, tears were streaming down my face. My grandson, lying on the bed next to me, asked if I was crying about his mom. I told him that it was just a bad dream, and I apologized for crying. Being autistic, it was difficult for him to grasp the situation at first, but he sat up and gently stroked my face, wiping away my tears, and said, "Mom says she's sorry. She said to trust her about that man. Did it?" My grandson relayed this message as though he was simply passing along information, but his words made perfect sense. As the day went on, my son noticed that something was different about me, so I told him about my dream. As I spoke, I watched the color drain from his face. I asked him what was wrong. He remembered a conversation from 6 years ago when Ginny had approached him with a trippy and scary dream about me. In her dream, I was acting crazy, desperately trying to convince her not to do something that ended up killing her. The dream had shaken her to her core because my desperation for her to be believing me had felt so real. She shared that it had scared her immensely. I vaguely remembered her mentioning something about a dream before, but she never went into much detail. All she had said was that she was sorry for whatever she did in her dream, and I had laughed it off, suggesting that maybe it was a sign not to follow through with whatever it was that she had dreamt about. Now my son and I were left speechless, trying to comprehend the profound implications of these interconnected dreams. Did they point to the existence of alternate or parallel universes? Could different times and dimensions truly coexist? And if so, had she heeded my warnings in another dimension, how many times had I tried to save her? It was mind-boggling how real the experience felt for both of us, despite the 6-year gap between our dreams. Why hadn't she listened to me in this life and time? I knew deep down that it was just a dream, but the emotions and connections it brought forth were undeniably powerful. I felt blessed to have heard her voice in the dream, telling me that she loved me and expressing her remorse. My son, too, had felt her hugs and witnessed her smiling at him in his workshop. My heart swelled with warmth when I overheard my grandson conversing with her in the other room, filling the void with a sense of her presence. Her daughter, in an attempt to maintain some semblance of normalcy, would send her text messages, pretending that everything was okay. But deep down, she missed hearing her mother saying her name. Despite her young age, my granddaughter seemed wise beyond her years. For her sake, I hoped that her mother found a way to visit her, even if it was subtle and intangible. The bond between the mother and the child is immeasurable, transcending the boundaries of life and death. As we navigated through this mystifying journey, my son and I found solace in each other's company. We shared our doubts, our questions, and our confusion, searching for meaning and understanding. While we may never truly unravel the enigma of those intertwined dreams, we held on to the belief that love and connection transcend the limitations of time and space. And perhaps, just perhaps, in the vast tapestry of existence, our souls find ways to connect and communicate across dimensions, leaving a glimmer of hope and possibility of redemption. In the end, whether it was a dream or a glimpse into another reality, I cherished every moment I shared with her, even if it was within the realm of the subconscious. And as I moved forward, carrying her memory in my heart, I vowed to honor her by embracing life, cherishing my loved ones, and embracing the unknown with an open mind and resilient spirit. I don't think the exorcism worked. 13 years ago, near Elizabeth Lake in California, my kids and I embarked on a journey of finding a new home. Within my price range, options were limited, but all we wanted was a place that we could call our own. It was a sunny day and not too hot, and armed with new listings from the realtor, we set out on our search. Our hopes were high and things were going relatively well as we came across a few promising houses. However, when we reached the last house, situated on a hill, the realtor unexpectedly refused to accompany us. I inquired about gaining access to the house, and she simply stated that it was unnecessary as no one even bothered to lock it. Confused by her strange behavior, we brushed it off and eagerly decided to explore the place after looking at the pictures. The directions were straightforward. We had to ascend a winding road, passing 2 houses on the right until we reached the top of a hill. Perched there was a large 2-story house with white walls and black trim. It appeared a bit worn with an overgrown yard. Pulling into the driveway, we sat for a moment, fixated on the bright red front door. Initially, the house didn't seem intimidating at all. We only saw its potential. Encouraged by this, I took the lead with my kids anxiously following behind as we approached the door, eager to explore. Oddly enough, despite our encounters with paranormal in the past, I felt nothing as I touched the door handle. Stepping inside, we were greeted by a staircase leading up to the landing, turning left to reveal open carpeted stairs that led me to the kitchen and living room on the second floor. To the left was the entrance to the garage, while a bedroom accompanied on the right side, followed by 3 more bedrooms connected by a long hallway that extended straight back. And all this culminated in a bathroom. Deciding to inspect the garage first, I intended to assess the foundation and pipes. It was there that my daughter, Ginny, noticed a small cross on the windowsill, and then another one on a different window. Not attached much significance to them, she asked if she could keep them and make earrings. I saw no reason to deny her request, since they had been left behind. Ascending the open stairs, I A sudden wave of dizziness washed over me, as if my entire world had been turned upside down. Desperately grabbing the rail, I sat down on the top step. My son Cody, rushing up the stairs, stopped halfway and clutched his throat, his face contorted in discomfort before hastily ascending the rest of the way. Feeling better, I resumed exploring the house with my children. The abundance of large windows allowed natural light to flood the rooms. We discovered a door leading to a balcony that overlooked the cliff behind the house. We stood there for a moment, taking in the breathtaking view, yet an underlying uneasiness nagged at all of us. Consequently, we decided to venture further into the house to investigate. Cody, who was peering out of the living room windows, continuously found things and excitedly called out to his sister. Meanwhile, Ginny began descending the stairs but lost her footing. Worriedly, I remarked that if we were going to acquire the house, installing an additional handrail would be necessary. As I inspected the front bedroom, envisioning it as my own, we ventured deeper into the house. With each step, the rooms grew darker and cooler. I noted that this would be advantageous during the summer months. Upon entering the bathroom, a sudden chill ran up my spine, causing every hair on my body to stand on end. Familiar with this unmistakable feeling, I sensed a breath beside me, knowing that if I looked, I might come face to face with something unsettling. I quickly turned my head, using my hand to shield my eyes as I passed the mirror. Stepping out of the bathroom, my older son, who had been in the back of the bedroom, pointed out a cross above the window and the door in that room. Curiosity turned to alarm as Cody pulled out more of the small crosses from his pocket, explaining that he had been collecting them for Ginny. In a rush of anxiety, I hurried over to the cross above the window and then to the one on the door. It was clear to us now that these crosses were different. They had been intentionally painted over and left there as if meant to stay. At that moment, panic started to creep in. We realized that the crosses adorned every opening, every window, and both sides of every doorway. Ginny made a valid point amidst our growing fear. As much as we wanted to flee, we knew that we had to put each cross back where we had found it. Together we went from room to room, meticulously returning every cross to its original position. With each cross replaced, a sense of relief washed over us, though an undercurrent of unease remained. It was a strange task restoring these objects that held a certain weight and significance in that house. Finally, we gathered at the front door, ready to leave. Ginny and I were the last ones to step outside. "Wow, it's warmer outside," she exclaimed. Suddenly, an unexpected force pushed me from behind, almost causing me to collide with Ginny. Stunned, I turned around, searching for an explanation. Unable to comprehend why the realtor had even shown us this house, I confronted her about it. To my surprise, she confessed that she had never set foot inside the house herself. However, after hearing our account, she vowed never to venture there. Reflecting on our experience later, we all reached the same conclusion. That house must have harbored an abundance of malevolence. We wondered how long the previous occupants had endured the torment before realizing that whatever resided there was too powerful for their faith to overcome. How dire must the situation have been for the owner to go such lengths as painting crosses over every entrance? As we continued our search for a new home, that fateful house stayed etched in our memories, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can reside within seemingly ordinary walls. We learned to trust our instincts, to pay attention to the signs and energies that surround us. But not all houses hold the warmth and safety we seek, and perhaps, sometimes, it's better to listen to the whispers of caution and walk away from a place that carries an unexplainable and haunting presence. At first, I didn't want to believe him. When my family and I moved into this house in Washington 3 years ago, we noticed some odd occurrences, like random orbs appearing from time to time. They didn't seem threatening, though, and one day, my granddaughter even had a playful encounter with an orb that seemed to be dancing to the music. It felt like the spirit of a child. Our house sits on vast acres of fields, surrounded by forests and even a few farms. Strangely, the guest room, laundry room, and bathroom always felt freezing cold, and a cool breeze would come from the guest bedroom closet. To isolate the cold, I hung a blanket in the doorway of the hallway. I reasoned that these rooms were colder because they were added later and built over our well. I have my mother's ashes in my home, but when I was asked if I wanted my sister's ashes as well, I felt an unexplained fear. I don't know why, but for many years I sensed a darkness around her that I couldn't ignore. However, after a year passed, that fear gradually subsided. I recalled my sister sharing a recurring dream before her death, where she was stuck in a desert. It dawned on me that her ashes were being kept by my daughter, who lives in the desert. It felt kinda right to bring her alongside her mother. Once my sister's ashes arrived, we placed them next to our mother's ashes outside my room. Similar to my mother, we surrounded her and some of her cherished belongings. At first there were no issues, but over time, my children started experiencing unsettling things. It didn't feel like my sister, it was something else entirely. Interestingly, no one in the family has felt her presence since she passed away. My children looked for me for reassurance, perhaps hoping I could make it all go away as I had done in previous homes. But I believe this entity remained hidden from me initially and preyed on those who showed fear, specifically targeting my grown children, my son, and his fiancée. I feel guilty for repeatedly telling my son that there is nothing in our house and that it wasn't haunted, claiming that he had cleansed it after my sister's passing. Cody, if you're reading this, or hearing this, I apologize for not believing you at that time. I only wanted to protect you and the kids from being scared. These are just a few of the things that have been happening in our home over the past few years. So one late afternoon, I was at the store while my son and his fiancée were watching the two grandchildren. The kids were playing hide and seek, taking turns hiding in the guest room closet. They later told me that something felt off. Each of them experienced the sensation of someone or something sharing the space with them in the closet, almost in their face. Initially, the room served as a toy room, but the kids refused to play in there. Interestingly, the only person who slept in that room without any issues was my ex during a visit. He used to be a non-believer until the other day when we were sitting there together, watching a show. We observed his dog intensely, following something that moved around the room. Then, the bathroom door opened, and his dog watched as something was entering the bathroom before the door shut behind it. At that point, his dog dove under the blanket. My ex's eyes widened in shock, and he asked if I'd seen what he saw. I couldn't help but laugh inside, witnessing the transformation of a former non-believer. I confirmed that I saw it too, and since then, no one in the family has dared to sleep in that room, not even me. 6 months ago, my son told me about an unsettling experience in the kitchen. He had gone downstairs late at night to grab a glass of water when he suddenly felt a chilling presence in the room. The atmosphere became heavy, and he could sense that something was watching him from the shadows. As he turned to leave, the kitchen faucet turned on by itself, unleashing a rush of icy water that cascaded into the sink. Shocked and unnerved, my son quickly retreated from the room, his heart pounding in his chest. He tried to brush it off as a strange coincidence, but deep down, he knew that there was more to it than mere chance. From that point on, the kitchen became a place of unease for the entire family. We would often hear unexplained noises like the sound of utensils clicking or the faint whispering of voices when no one else was around. Items would mysteriously move from their original places, and sometimes we would catch glimpses of fleeting shadows out of the corners of our eyes. Despite these eerie encounters, we tried to maintain a sense of normalcy in our home. We hung up protective charms and prayed for peace, hoping that these actions would create a barrier against whatever entity resided within our house. However, it seemed that our efforts only served to temporarily subdue the activity, as if the presence was merely biding its time. One evening as I was preparing dinner, I felt a sudden gust of wind sweep through the kitchen. Even though all of the windows were closed, startled, I glanced around, searching for the source of the disturbance. Then once again in the corner of my eye, I saw a glimpse of a figure standing in the doorway, its form indistinct and ethereal. Fear gripped my heart and I watched the figure slowly dissipate into thin air. It was in that moment that I realized that we were dealing with something beyond our understanding. It became clear to me that the spirit haunting our home wasn't my sister or any other deceased family member. This entity was somehow altogether different, something that had attached itself to our house. Determined to find answers and bring an end to the unsettling occurrences, I began researching the history of our property. I discovered that the land had once been part of a larger estate, owned by a wealthy family with a tragic past. The original house on the property had burned down under mysterious circumstances, claiming the lives of several family members. The more I delved into the history, the more it became apparent that the restless spirits of the past were still lingering in our midst. It seemed that the negative energy from the tragic event had imprinted itself on the land, creating a haunting that sort of transcended time. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I sought the assistance of a paranormal investigator. Together, we conducted thorough investigations using various tools and techniques to communicate with the spirits. Through these interactions, we learned that the entities were trapped in a state of sorrow and unrest, unable to find peace. With the help of the investigator, we performed a cleansing ritual aimed at releasing the trapped spirits and restoring balance to our home. It was a solemn and emotional process as we offered prayers and heartfelt intentions for the spirit's liberation. In the days that followed, a sense of tranquility settled over our home. The temperature in the guest room, laundry room, and bathroom returned to normal, and the kitchen no longer held an oppressive atmosphere. The strange occurrences gradually ceased, and we could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Though the memory of those unsettling experiences remain etched in our minds, we have learned to appreciate the newfound serenity in our home. We cherish the moments spent with family, knowing that we have overcome the darkness that once plagued us. As time passes, we continue to honor the spirits that once dwelled here. We light candles in remembrance, offering our gratitude for the guidance and strength we gained from this transformative journey. And in doing so, we hope that the spirits have finally found peace that they have long been denied, leaving behind a home filled with love and tranquility. He saved me. In 1997, I found myself in Lancaster, California, moving into an apartment with my youngest son and father, Kev. Things seemed okay at first, but that illusion quickly shattered. Kev started drinking again and spending time with his brothers and friends. He would disappear for days, only to return home accusing me of infidelity. Life became unbearable, and meanwhile, I had been diligently paying for a storage unit that held precious memories of my family and other children from different times of our lives. It held immense importance to me. Since my car had been stolen before we moved in, I had to rely on Kev and his family to handle the finances. However, in the last few months before I left him, Kev's behavior became increasingly erratic. He delved into drug use, making it a regular part of his life. One evening as I was preparing dinner, I heard commotion outside. My name was being called. Looking out of the living room window, I was shocked to see our once quiet street filled with flashing red and blue lights. Amidst the chaos, Kev stood in the midst of all of it, yelling my name. Before I could even rush outside, an officer knocked on my door. He informed me that my car was outside, and I asked if I wanted to claim it. If not, it would be towed away. Confused, I couldn't comprehend what he was saying. As it turned out, Kev's brother had taken my car and stored it at their mother's house. Kev had told the sheriff that the car was mine, intending to shift to blame for the drugs to the car, shifting it. Absurd, right? Thankfully, the officer believed me and Kev was sent back to prison. So there I sat, alone and in shock. But things took a turn for the worse when the landlord appeared a few days later. He informed me that I hadn't paid rent for 4 months and that I hadn't responded to letters I never received. I was given 10 days to vacate the premises, barely enough time to move any of my belongings. Shortly after the utilities were cut off, to add insult to injury, I discovered that Kev had taken every penny I had saved. My world was turned upside down and I felt utterly crushed. With nowhere else to go and unable to seek refuge with my mother due to complications, I temporarily moved in with a friend. Initially, everything seemed fine. We kept to ourselves and steered clear of the drug-filled lifestyle. However, my depression grew and the temptation to numb the pain became overwhelming. I made the difficult decision to call my mother and ask her to take my son away from that environment. I didn't want him exposed to such toxicity. I didn't want any of my children to witness me in that state either. I was a complete mess, with my self-esteem at an all-time low. Every time I drove past my boarded-up apartment with my belongings still inside, it served as a constant reminder of my failures. One day my friend collected my mail from the abandoned apartment. Among the letters was a devastating blow, the final straw. Kev had stopped paying for my storage unit, and it was now up for auction at a price far beyond my reach. That was it. I had lost the last remnants of what I held dear. Something snapped inside me. In my disturbed state of mind, I dropped the letter and walked out of the house barefoot, wearing only a long t-shirt despite the freezing weather. I wandered over to a nearby mini-mart, filled a cup with cocoa, and walked out without paying. My friend noticed and covered the cost. Eventually, she found me sitting in a park, staring blankly into nothing as my mind spiraled into darkness. I was in a bad place, unable to find a way out of the overwhelming despair that consumed me. I couldn't bring myself to reach out to my children or my mother and tell them about the loss of everything that we had cherished. The thought of exposing them to my shattered existence filled me with shame and guilt. It felt as though my children would be the better of me without me. It felt as though my children would be better off without me. I couldn't bring myself to reach out to my children or my mother and tell them about the loss of everything that we had cherished. The thought of exposing them to my shattered existence filled me with shame and guilt. I felt as though my children would be better off without me. Telling my friends I was going to visit my family, I parked my car a couple blocks away in an alley. I broke into my old apartment with its boarded-up windows and made my way to the back, hoping to remain unnoticed. There on the couch, I sat down. The room was devoid of light, except for the faint glow of a single candle illuminating a book, casting eerie shadows. In that dimness, I wrote farewell letters to my family, each page filled with words addressed to my children, urging them to support one another and strive for greatness, to not follow in my footsteps. I poured my heart out in a letter to my mother, acknowledging her incredible job raising me and expressing profound remorse for the pain I had caused her. Tears stained the crumbled pages, blending with the ink. I held a handful of pills in my trembling hand, enough to end my suffering. I swallowed them, succumbing to the darkness that enveloped me. A burning sensation gripped my stomach and my eyelids grew heavy. It felt like the end. Yet amidst the suffocating silence, a flicker of awareness stirred within me. My eyes struggled to focus, and there in the room, I saw people moving back and forth, as if they were oblivious to my presence. The surroundings lacked color, and I extended my arm, attempting to touch them, but my hand only passed through air. Suddenly, a woman halted in her tracks. She faced toward, and then turned her head and looked directly at me. A blood-curdling scream escaped her lips before she resumed her aimless wandering. Confusion filled me, and I managed to mutter, "What are you?" But my own voice sounded distant and faint. She ignored my question, disappearing into the grayness. Then a voice, firm and commanding, cut through the haze. "Wake up," he demanded. "It isn't your time." The figure, dressed in a trench coat, exuded an air of authority in its monochromatic environment. My head slumped back down, but he persisted. Another forceful nudge to my chest, accompanied by his resolute voice, "It is not your time." A sharp slap across my face jolted me, as if a gust of cold air grazed my neck. Hands grasped my shoulders, shaking me vigorously, forcing my head to flop from side to side. In that moment, I lost consciousness. When I awoke, I found myself gasping for air, with fingers down my throat, struggling to breathe. It was a girl I had only met twice, acting purely on intuition and a persistent feeling that I needed help. She couldn't shake off the feeling for hours despite not understanding why. She implored her friend to break down the door, and even though he feared getting into trouble, he experienced the same undeniable urge. I'll forever carry gratitude towards her for saving me and towards the man who relentlessly tried to rouse me until help arrived. Life gradually improved from that point forward. I began to reconcile my thoughts, distancing myself from the destructive life and toxic relationships. I learned that I couldn't battle my demons alone. We needed to support one another. Reflecting on the letters I had written years later filled me with shame. The realization of the pain and anguish my actions could have caused my family was a devastating blow. It was a selfish act, driven by temporary despair and a distorted perception of the world. To anyone out there who feels trapped in their suffering, please know that there is a way out. Believe me, I've been there. Don't push your loved ones away. They may not fully understand, but they can listen. And if you still feel unheard, seek help from professionals who can guide you through the darkness. Remember, only time can reveal the answers, and there's always hope, even in the bleakest moments. Santa Paula. I was going through a very nasty battle with the father of 3 of my children. I strongly believed that children should know both parents and have a positive relationship with them, but this man was pure evil. We were all living in fear for our lives, including my mother. I had no choice but to place my children somewhere safe. Thankfully, my mother and sister agreed to take care of my 5 children while we dealt with this terrifying situation. I made a promise to my girls that they would never have to see this man ever again. He was a relentless stalker, always finding ways to track us down. His desire for revenge grew stronger when we broke free and ran away. We managed to find a small brick triplex. It was a townhouse apartment in a Spanish community called Santa Paula. It was situated off an 8th Street and consisted of 4 small garages lining the driveway, with a partially enclosed courtyard and a separate 2-story house in the front. The place wasn't very spacious, but it was enough for my kids. The landlord understood our desperate situation and allowed us to move in. The downstairs area of the townhouse had a living room, a bathroom, and a kitchen, with an open cubbyhole beneath the stairs. However, the living room was quite narrow, only about 10 feet wide. The stairs were located at the back of the house, near the door leading to the backyard. Upon reaching the top of the stairs, there was a bathroom on the right and a very small bedroom next to it. To the left of the stairs, facing the front of the house, was a long bedroom. Initially, everything seemed fine. It was a welcome relief from the turmoil that we had just experienced, but soon things began to change. The kids all slept together on mattresses in the small bedroom next to their baby sister's crib, but they didn't like it in there. The baby would stand in her crib and scream as if something frightened her. The children started wetting the bed because they were too scared to walk through the doorway. Night after night, this continued until my mother reaching her breaking point. She moved all the children into the bigger room where she and the baby slept, and the crib was no longer used. However, my youngest boy at the time refused to sleep upstairs. We had a couch and a love seat, so my sister slept downstairs with him. It was in that house that he stopped talking, and his eating habits changed for years to come. He would stand point and grunt at the open space under the stairs, so my sister covered it with a blanket. The laundry room was located outside behind the garages. One day while I was there, we were all playing a board game. My sister asked my oldest son to leave the game and accompany her to do a load of laundry. I questioned why he had to go and why they needed a walkie-talkie. She replied that she was scared because she felt someone was watching her the entire time she was in there. Concerned, I decided to go with her, and indeed, I felt that eerie presence too. I visited often, always changing my route to ensure that I wasn't being followed. Each time, tears would flow when it was time to leave. We would take walks through the neighborhood and fantasize about living in one of those grand, beautiful houses. The kids would ask me if I thought any of them were haunted. I couldn't help but feel a few of them were, not because they were old or scary looking, but because there was an inexplicable aura. Santa Paula was an old town with a history filled with its fair share of deaths. Whenever I visited, the kids would tell me about their new friends next door, but they never mentioned the boy who lived in the front house. I caught glimpses of him in the upstairs window a few times. It struck me as odd that he never seemed to venture outside. I asked the neighbor next door about him, but she claimed to have never seen any other children, just an old lady whose husband had passed away years prior. I distinctly remember seeing the boy in the upstairs window 3 days after the old lady's demise. It was the only light on in the house. A week later, the landlord informed my mother that there were many unclaimed items left behind in the basement. She thought that we could make use of them. The basement doors were located outside, resembling a double-door storm shelter next to the house. As the landlord opened the doors one by one, revealing stone steps leading into darkness, I grabbed a flashlight and ventured down while my mother waited outside. I discovered old furniture, a crib, toys, and boys' clothes in boxes. Then I stumbled upon a photograph that was undeniably familiar. It was that little boy. An overwhelming sense of sadness and distress consumed me, and suddenly it felt like we were intruding, as if we shouldn't be touching those things. The walls seemed to close in on me, and I quickly ran back up the stairs, telling my mother, no, we wouldn't be taking anything from that basement. Even if there were things that we could use, it just didn't feel right. Curiosity led me to inquire about what happened to the boy, now that the old lady had passed away, assuming he was her grandson. The landlord revealed that there was no boy. Her son had died many years ago, tragically shooting himself with his father's gun, which he had found in the basement. He was an only child. That revelation sent shivers down our spines. My daughter Penny and my other kid kept telling me about the strange and scary things that they experienced, especially the presence upstairs in the hallway outside the bedrooms. It always made us feel uneasy. One day I found Ginny, my daughter, in that area. As I entered the room to see what she was up to, an eerie silence enveloped the space. She was busy drawing all over my mother's large standing suitcase. When I confronted her, she calmly turned her head to look at me, but it seemed like she wasn't really there. I called out her name and she looked surprised, as if she couldn't understand what she had just done. She dropped the marker and cried out, "What's happening? It wasn't me, I didn't do it." I frequently spotted a figure in the hallway, often standing in the doorway of the bedrooms, silently watching us sleep. Unfortunately, there's nothing we could really do to make it go away. Eventually, we were able to save enough money to move. My mother believed that there was an intense paranormal activity in that place due to its location near to an old train stop and firehouse. You could sense the weight of history hanging in the air. The area had witnessed numerous territorial battles and the loss of many young lives. Just the other day, I was talking to my eldest daughter, Penny, about these experiences. We both described seeing the same dark figure wearing a hat, standing in the hallway doorway almost every night. Soon after, we were able to relocate to a mobile home in Oxnard, leaving behind the haunting and the memories of that old townhouse in Santa Paula. Lily's Nightmares. There have been moments in my life where I felt an inherent responsibility to be the voice for those who were too afraid or perhaps too unable to speak. Whether it was someone enduring abuse or an individual tormented by unseen forces, I believed it was my duty to stand up for them. I hoped that I had passed on this sense of advocacy to my children, teaching them to defend those who couldn't defend themselves. With that in mind, I want to share a particular experience involving something unseen back in 2006. I had met my friend at a self-help meeting. She exuded elegance, while I was just my carefree, happy-go-lucky self. Despite coming from an entirely different background, we formed a strong bond. Something clicked between us, and we were there for each other through thick and thin. However, certain events led my friend and her children to move to Kansas. Although I was heartbroken to see her go, I knew that it was what she needed at the time. I made several trips to visit her, sometimes for significant life events and other times simply because we missed each other's hugs. But every time I entered her home, I felt an unsettling unease. There was something I couldn't quite pinpoint, but it made me uncomfortable. Her house was a ranch-style 2-story build in the 70s, with bricks running halfway up the walls and shutters on all the windows. The entrance boasted a magnificent wooden door with an etched panel. Upon opening it, a set of stairs stretched ahead, leading to the second landing. To the right was a living room, while to the left was a sitting room, dining room, kitchen, and den. During my first visit, I kept catching glimpses of something on the landing at the top of the stairs, but it would vanish the moment I looked again. On one occasion, I saw what I thought was her small daughter, a dark figure slowly descending up one step at a time before disappearing near the bottom. Sometimes before entering the house, I sensed a shadowy figure standing on the other side of the door. Glimpsed through the etched glass panel, and once I had planned to surprise my friend by working on her garden, but upon witnessing that figure, I decided to wait outside until she returned from work, not mentioning a word about it to her. At night, I would ascend the stairs, only to sprint to my room as quickly as I could. I must have appeared comical, as I'm not as young as I used to be. My room, located at the front of the house, filled with windows that allowed natural light to filter in. And despite this, it always seemed a bit dark to me. The room itself was spacious, with the door placed all the way across, leading to the hallway. Another room and a bathroom was there too. Christy's room occupied the opposite side. I kept waking up with chills, piling on more blankets to ward off the cold, but I dismissed it as nothing unusual. I mentioned the shadows to Christy once, but she brushed it off with a playful remark. "Shut up, don't freak me out in my new house." So I let the matter rest, trying to push it to the back of my mind and convince myself that it was all just my imagination. I visited her home a few more times, and each visit was accompanied by strange dreams, waking up to loud noises in my ears, and persistent sightings of shadows. I even heard my name being called when no one else was around. I cautiously brought up these experiences with Christy, asking if she was certain it was nothing. She confessed that she too had glimpsed unusual occurrences, but what troubled her even more were that her daughter's terrifying dreams, which startled her awake at all hours of the night. While it was possible that Lily was simply having nightmares, I couldn't discount the possibility of something else, having had my own share of unexplainable encounters as a child. During my final visit, the atmosphere seemed lighter. Fresh snow covered the ground, and I had been moved into a smaller room upstairs, with Lily now occupying the larger one. However, that night felt off in some indescribable way. I remember placing 3 nightlights in my room, tossing and turning as if something were watching me from behind. It sent shivers down my spine. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep, only to be consumed by twisted dreams of 2 individuals, a man and a woman. The woman had dark hair that was intricately styled into a pointed shape atop her head. The man had short, shiny hair that also stood up on end. At one point, he vigorously shook his head from side to side before leaning over me, pressing his hand against my shoulder and screaming in my ear to wake up. Startled, I opened my eyes to witness swirling shapes encompassing the room, along with fleeting images of their faces. I sat up and the apparitions dissipated. From Lily's room, I could hear her moaning, so I cautiously approached her door, Standing in the doorway, I mentally drew an invisible line of protection and said a prayer. Satisfied, I returned to my room, not wanting to disturb anyone by aimlessly wandering around in the dark. I lay back down and managed to fall asleep, but my slumber was abruptly interrupted by voices in the hallway. I didn't recognize the voices or their hushed conversation, but it felt as if I were being mocked. I saw the figure standing in Lily's doorway, gazing at her while whispering and occasionally glancing back toward my room. Suddenly, Lily screamed, causing the figure to swiftly fade away just as Christy turned the corner to comfort her. When Christy woke up, I hesitated to share the full extent of what had occurred, not wanting to frighten her. However, I felt compelled to confide in her to some degree. I described the man and woman I'd seen in my dreams, unsure if she would believe me. Later, when Lily came downstairs, recounting her unsettling dreams once again, I asked her to draw a picture of the people that she had seen. To my astonishment, her drawings matched the descriptions I'd given to Christy. We didn't delve further into the matter, as we didn't want to alarm Lily, and discussing it seemed to make Christy uncomfortable. But in a subsequent conversation, she mentioned that Lily's dream had become less terrifying, and the general atmosphere of the house had improved. It was during that conversation that Christy revealed that she knew what I had done. Bewildered, I replied, "Whatever do you mean?" I secretly worried that she had somehow installed cameras and thought I was losing my mind. To my surprise, she responded, "I found the salt."